Hello adventurers and welcome to Sea Lion Bay here at Chessington. My name is Ash, I'm joined here by our keepers. We've got Alice there on the beach, we've got Sophie over there by the rocks, and of course the stars of today's show. Please give a big round of applause for Ariel and Hugo, our sea lions.
Clap, clap, clap.
So these are two of the Californian sea lions that we have at Chessington. Ariel lives here with her half-sister Carla, and then Carla and Hugo, they have a one-year-old son together called Leo. So Mum and son are chilling backstage at the moment, while we got these two here for a little bit of a training session. Now the first thing that we need to cover here at Sea Lion Bay is a little bit of a case of mistaken identity. Because our sea lions, all the time, they get confused with another very similar looking animal. Does anyone want to shout out for me, loud as you can, what animal do you think gets confused with our sea lions a lot? Shout it out for me, guys. Yeah? Seals, yes. So our sea lions get called seals a lot, which is pretty embarrassing for them. They don't really like being called seals all that much. Now, to be fair, they are very closely related animals. Seals and sea lions are both in the pinniped family, and that's a word that means fin-footed. So as you can see, sea lions, they've got 4 flippers in total. They've got 2 at the front, and they've got 2 at the back. And it's actually their flippers that is the first main way to tell the difference between seals and sea lions. Now, if you were to hold out your arm and just think from shoulder to fingertip, that is about as big as a sea lion's front flipper is. So they're really big and they're really strong. So a sea lion can support their entire body weight on just those 2 front flippers alone, which is pretty cool. Now, when sea lions come onto dry land, they will swivel their back flippers round so that they can stand on all 4s, and that means that when they're up on the beach, they can walk around as well. They can, do their little spins and do their little dances or whatever they want, really. As you can see, they're pretty good on those 4 flippers. Now, you wouldn't catch a seal doing any of that stuff, because seals, their front flippers are way too small. They're only about the size of a person's hand in comparison. So when a seal comes onto dry land, instead of standing up and walking around on its flippers, a seal would just have to sort of flop around on its belly like a big fat slug instead. So Ariel's giving us a lovely impression of what a seal would look like on dry land, just flopping around instead. Now, the difference in flipper size also changes the way these guys move in the water, because a seal, they'll rely mainly on their back flippers to swim, and they move their whole body kind of like the way a fish does. Whereas a sea lion, because they've got these big front flippers, they can use those to help push themselves through the water, and that means these guys, they can get pretty fast when they want to. They can reach speeds of up to 25 miles an hour when they're going at their full speed. So let's see if Ariel feels like going for a little show of her speed today. There we go, speeding through the water. Off she goes. Now when Ariel reaches the other side of the pool, I think a big round of applause is in order for that show speed. There we go, give her a clap. Brilliant. Now, as well as that flipper size, there is one other way to tell the difference between seals and sea lions. It's a bit of a smaller difference, but it might be the easiest one to spot if you're ever out in the wild. So if you have a look at the side of our sea lion's head, you'll be able to see that they have these little flappy ears that stick out. They have these little tube ears that stick out from the side of their head. Personally, they remind me a lot of Shrek's ears, that's just the way I remember them. But these little Shrek ears are something that sea lions have, but seals, they don't have them at all. They've just got holes in the sides of their heads for ears. So if you're ever out in the wild and you see a furry little face bobbing around in the water, see if you can spot those flappy little ears, because if you can see the ears, then it's probably going to be a sea lion, and if you can't see the ears, if it's just holes, then it's probably a seal instead. So what do you reckon, guys? Do you think we're pretty confident on those differences between seals and sea lions? Yeah? Yeah, excellent. We're not going to be making any mistakes with our sea lions. Not today. Now, there are a couple of things that seals and sea lions do have in common, and one of those things is the kind of predators that they would be facing if they were out in the wild, so any animal that would want to eat them. Now, thankfully, we don't really have to worry about predators here at Chessington, but our sea lions, they do a very good job. As you can see, I was checking the water just to make sure it's all safe in there before she goes for a little swim. Now, our sea lions do a very good impression of an animal that would hunt them in the wild. What animal do you think Ariel's pretending to be here with their flipper out the water like that? Shout it out for me, guys. Shark! Yes, brilliant. So sharks would hunt sea lions and seals in the wild. Now, that might sound scary, but sharks, they're just big fish. And at the end of the day, a fish can't leave the water, they've got to stay in the sea. So when a sea lion's getting chased by a shark, they just need to find the nearest patch of dry land, maybe find somewhere nice and high up, and they'll be totally safe from a shark attack, because, sharks, they can't follow them onto dry land or anything like that. So see, totally safe from a shark, not that scary really. But there are some other predators that bit more challenging to escape from. Does anyone know any other predators of seals and sea lions? Just shout it out if you do know. I think I heard killer whale from someone there. Yes, so killer whales, orcas, would hunt sea lions as well. Now, they're a little bit trickier because just like sea lions, killer whales are mammals, which means that they breathe air, and they can actually follow a sea lion onto dry land for short periods of time in a behaviour called beaching. So coming onto dry land isn't necessarily going to work, so sea lions instead will do something called porpoising, which Ariel is demonstrating here. So porpoising is where the sea lion will jump in and out of the water over and over again, just like this. As you can see, it's causing quite a bit of splashing. It's kicking up a lot of little bubbles in the water. Now imagine it's not just one sea lion doing this, but a whole wild colony of like 15 to 20, maybe even 30 individuals, all going at once, and that is going to be a whole lot of splashing and a whole lot of little bubbles. So any killer whale that's chasing a sea lion is just going to completely lose track of its prey amidst all that splashing and give up. Now, saying that, if the killer whale doesn't give up, there is one last trick that our sea lions have up their sleeve, and using their big powerful front flippers, they can actually launch their entire bodies all the way out of the water to avoid being eaten. Just like that, beautiful synchronized jumps from our sea lions there. I think a big round of applause is in order for that impressive little display of jumping there. That's it, give yourself a clap to Ariel. Now, it isn't just predators that these guys have to worry about though. Unfortunately, there is another massive threat out there that not just sea lions but all marine life faces. And this is a threat that's actually caused by us, so we all need to make sure that we do our part to try and stop it. And that threat is plastic pollution. So it's estimated that by the year 2050, there'll actually be more plastic in the world's oceans than fish, which is a pretty scary thought because sea lions, they eat a lot of fish. So if they eat some fish that's got some plastic in it, or if they eat some plastic thinking that it's some fish, then we could see our sea lions go belly up, which obviously we don't want that to happen. Now, thankfully, because plastic pollution is something we cause, it does mean we also have the power to stop it. And to stop plastic pollution, it really is as simple as just picking up our litter and putting it in the bin, because otherwise all that rubbish on the floor will end up in the ocean someday, clogging up the sea for these guys. But also, recycle our plastic wherever we can. So recycling is so easy, we've even taught our sea lions how to do it. So Ariel here, if she sees something like that in the water, then she's going to go fetch it and bring it to her nearest recycling bin. So if we can get our sea lions to recycle, then we really have no excuse ourselves. Here she comes, taking it down there. There we go, brilliant. Give her a clap for that. Excellent work there, Ariel. Now what we're doing with our sea lions here today, we're doing a little bit of a training session with them. And we do training with our sea lions every single day, and we do it all throughout the day as well, not just during the talk, but all throughout the day. And there are a number of reasons that we do training with our sea lions. The first reason is that it's just really good exercise for them. So we can get our sea lions to do really high energy behaviours, really physically demanding stuff, gives them a good workout, and it means that our sea lions will stay in really good physical condition. So physical exercise, that's one reason. Lovely little flip there. But another reason is for mental stimulation. So sea lions, these guys, they are very, very clever animals. In fact, Ariel and her sister Carla, they are so smart that they know over 60 different behaviours. So these guys, they have really big brains, and to keep those big brains active, we give them all of these complex behaviours. But I would say that the most important reason that we do any kind of training with our sea lions is for something called husbandry health checks. So these are behaviours that we can teach to our sea lions to make sure that they're staying nice and healthy, make sure that they're doing alright. So there's loads of different behaviours that we can teach these guys to do. We can get them to do things like opening their mouths nice and wide, so we can like check on their mouths and check their teeth are doing okay. We can get them to hold their eyes open, so we can like check their eyes and give them eye drops if we need to as well. We can get them to lift up their flippers one by one so that we can check under there for any like lumps, bumps, cuts or anything that shouldn't be there. We can check their heads, check their bottoms, check their tummies. Basically we can check all over their body and make sure that they're doing all right. So it means that any time our sea lions do get injured, we notice it straight away and we can make sure they're getting all the care and all the treatment that they need for it. Now it also means that when the vet has to come visit these guys, they're not going to get too freaked out by it either, because they're already used to all of these behaviours, they know what they're doing, and they associate doing them with a nice tasty reward anyway. So, in fact our girl sea lions, Carla and Ariel, are so good with vet visits, they can even have things like a massive x-ray machine passing over them, they can have ultrasounds taken of them if they get pregnant, and they can even have their blood taken as well. All voluntarily, we don't have to knock them down first, we can do it with them up and active, which is great because it means everything goes a lot smoother, and it means our sea lions are a lot happier about the whole thing as well. Now, as I say, Ariel, she knows over 60 different behaviours, and he's not far behind, he knows over 30 himself. So a lot of people often ask us how it is we actually start training our sea lions. And what we do is we use something called positive reinforcement. So positive reinforcement basically means every time our sea lions give us a behaviour that we want to see from them, then we reward that behaviour with fish. So fish is the best reward for a sea lion. They absolutely love it. They'll also get like belly rubs and tickles from time to time too, but fish is the best motivator. So they get a reward every time they give us the right behaviour. But if they give us the wrong behaviour, if they make a mistake or something like that, then we don't just not feed them anything, because that would be really mean. What we do then, if they do make a mistake, is we just ignore that. We'll give them an easier behaviour afterwards, make sure they get all the food and all the positivity for doing that, and then we work at that trickier one over and over again, until eventually they get used to doing all those different behaviours, and in the meantime, while they're still learning, they don't miss out on any tasty food. Now, when we're starting out with a really young sea lion, when we're training those new behaviours, we use something called a target stick, which you can see Alice has here at the moment. So a target stick is a stick with a rounded end that we will introduce to a young sea lion. We will be moving that stick in different ways to get them to follow that stick's movement. Once they're following the stick nice and closely, we reward that curiosity with fish, so that they're basically magnetised to the stick and they will follow it nice and closely. We move the stick in different ways to encourage those different movements, those different behaviours. And then once they're following the stick movements really well, then we move from the different movements of the stick onto different movements of our hands. So that's how our sea lions learn all of these behaviours they've been showing off today. Started out with the stick and moved on to hand gestures. All of the 60 odd behaviours that Ariel knows and the 30 odd that Hugo knows all started out with the stick. Now, Ariel and Hugo, these guys, they've done a really great job with our training session today, so I think they earned one last really big round of applause from everyone for doing such a great job with our training session. There we go. Thank you all so much for coming down to Sea Lion Bay. I hope you enjoyed watching our training session. Hope you learned a little something about our sea lions and what we get up to down here. If you do have any more questions, feel free to ask us at the end. You can catch us before we nip off. Otherwise, it's goodbye from me, goodbye from the keepers, and of course goodbye from Ariel and Hugo. And we hope you enjoyed the rest of your day here at Chesterton.